Hey guys, it's Mr. Riz, and this is the first video notes that you guys will see. Now some of the stuff we'll be going over in class, other times you guys will be watching the videos and be going through the guided notes yourself. You should have a printed copy of the guided notes to go along, and you'll keep that in your notebook. If not, you can go to the Canvas site and download one and print one off yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. This is 1.1, all about points, lines, and planes. At the first part, right at the top, it will say what you'll learn. It wants you to actually read the book, but we'll go ahead here and we're going to put out our learning objectives. So the objective for lesson 1.1 is identify and model points, lines, and planes, and identify intersections between lines and planes. So go ahead and write those two down, and if any time during the video if you guys need to pause, or there'll be times that I suggest that you guys pause to try to work things out on your own, go ahead and do that. Alright, once you got that done, we're moving on to the next slide. Okay, so there's actually a lot of vocab in the first chapter that we need to go over. So these will be a few times that you'll actually be writing down a lot of just vocab. So we need to go through. Okay, first thing we need to talk about is a undefined term, and that is something that can only be explained using examples and descriptions. So something you won't be able to describe, like a house is something you can describe. So this is something you can't define without drawing it or giving an example of it. Next thing, we're going to start small. Point. That is a location that has neither shape or size. So a point is just a location. It is not a dot. A dot actually has a size to it. It's just a location. Alright, getting a little bit bigger. Next thing we'll do is a line, and that is made up of points and has no thickness or width. So if you try to think of a line, it's not actually just like a straight line, but it's like if we think of like a bunch of dots that are just right next to each other and there is no gap in between those dots. So it's just a bunch of points next to each other. And lastly, well, not lastly on this, but the next one on the group, bigger, is a plane, and that is a flat surface made up of points that extends indefinitely in all directions. So it goes on forever in every single direction. Well, back and forth, left and right. Alright, we'll get into more details about these three in a bit, but we're just doing some vocab. Alright, next one. Alright, next, big word that you guys are going to need to know this year, and especially for the OGTs, collinear. That is points that line on the same line. For example, I got this point, and this point, and this point, and I don't know, I'll put another one over here. We can say these two, well, way to go. Let's do that again. Whoop. Those two are collinear. They're on the same line, but that other one isn't. Alright, next let's do coplanar. It is points that lie on the same plane. So if you try to think of it, collinear means they're on the same line. Coplanar means they're on the same plane. Okay. Moving on. Next we need to talk about what intersection is, and that's very important. Here we go. The set of points two or more geometric figures have in common. So it could be like find the intersection of line A and line B, or find the intersection of plane X and plane Y. We can even be more specific and find the intersection of plane X and line Y. So it can be two or more things coming together, seeing where they cross. That's an intersection, just like the intersection of a street. Alright, next we have definition or defined terms, and we'll explain those pretty easily by can be explained using undefined terms and or other defined terms. So these are things that we need to have examples of, but we can explain with words. So basically the next thing that is a defined term would be space, and that is a boundless three-dimensional set of all points. So I think of everything that we have, it's within a space. Now we actually can have multiple spaces. We just have different scenarios going on in each space. And whenever we have multiple things, we always like to label them, which is what we're going to do on the next slide. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to model a point, line, and a plane and put that in a drawing. Now underneath these drawings, we're going to be specific on how we label them as well, and how I want you guys to be able to label them. So let's go through the first one and do a point. There it is, a point. Now a point is just, we use a dot. Now the biggest thing that we do is we use a lowercase letter to represent that, and so if we ever need to write that out, we just call it point A. There really isn't much else to do that. Sometimes they might even just call it A, but that's a point. That's what we do. Now the next thing that we need to do is a line, and a line contains 2 points. So well, I'm going to draw a line to separate the two groups, but next up we're going to do a line, and let's show you what that looks like. So there's a line. I drew the line AB. Now they use capital letters and they use lowercase letters, but most of the time they use capital letters. So here's the line. Now when they label it, there's multiple ways that we can label it. Sometimes it looks like this. Line AB, or it could go the other way, line BA. Now the biggest thing that we do is we make sure that we put arrows above the AB and the BA. That way we're telling it goes on forever. Now when we get into the next couple sections, there is a difference between AB with arrows and AB without arrows. One other thing we need to add is sometimes next to the line off to the side, usually by the arrow, they might use like an italicized letter. Let's see, the best italicized letter I can draw is L, and sometimes they call this line L. Like so. So just don't get thrown off if you ever see that. Alright, next one we need to talk about is a plane. Break this off, show you what a plane looks like. And there's a plane. Now a plane, we usually use a rectangle, like a slanted rectangle to show, and there's different ways that we can call this. Sometimes we'd call this plane XYZ, plane ZXY, so on and so forth. The biggest thing, we need to make sure that they are non-collinear points, and that's a big thing we'll get into, but it has to be non-collinear points. Same thing just like before with the line. Sometimes we'll have an italicized lettered, and I don't know, but it's going to be italicized capital letter. So we'll draw like a fancy A here, and sometimes I'll call this plane A. Alright, next thing, let's talk about the difference between defined and undefined terms. Okay, so we're going to use this table here. We already have the definitions, so if you guys just want to copy the definitions over, we're going to list some examples of defined terms and undefined terms. So there's our definitions again, and let's put the examples of a defined term. We have space, intersection, collinear, coplanar, and intersection. Oh, I have intersection written down twice. Great, awesome. Now, those are the last couple definitions we talked about, so that means undefined terms have to be those special 3: point, line, and plane. Alright, next, let's just talk about something. We'll do a couple of these every now and then. You might not always do these, but the helping you remember. I think this is a good one to help you for the OGT. Okay, recall or look in the dictionary of the meaning of the prefix co. What does the prefix mean, and how can you help you remember of collinear or coplanar? Now, what it means is joining or working together. So that's what anytime you like co-workers, or guys that work together, or girls or people that work together. And how can it help you remember? 2 or more points together. So if they're on the same line, they're collinear. If they're on the same plane, they're coplanar. Alright, so there's section 1.1. Hopefully that was alright, and you guys starting to get the hang of what our video notes are going to be like.